Hello, I am Mayor Drew Combs, and welcome to the October 7th Special and Regular City Council meeting. This is a hybrid meeting with City Council, city staff, and members of the public participating virtually and in City Council chambers. Please note public comment speaker time may be limited if there are more than 10 speakers on an item. We also ask that if you are in person, please submit your speaker cards for all agenda items to the city clerk at this time. Roll call. I would like to introduce City Council members and staff present. In City Council chambers are myself, Mayor Drew Combs, Vice Mayor Betsy Nash, and City Council members Jeff Schmidt and Jennifer Wise. City Council member Cecilia Taylor will be absent today. Staff present include City Manager Justin Murphy, City Attorney Nero Doherty, and City Clerk Judy Herron. The first item is closed session. City Clerk Herron, please call for public comment on the closed session items.
Thank you, Mayor Combs. So at this time, if any member of the public wishes to provide comment on our closed session item C1 related to anticipated litigation, if you are in person, you can return that speaker card to me here at the clerk's desk. If you're virtual, engage that hand feature. Calling in, please press *9 now. And this will be the final call for public comment on our closed session item C1. Seeing no hands or cards, Mayor Combs, you may continue.
Thank you, Clerk Herron. The City Council will now adjourn to the closed session and intends to reconvene at approximately 6:15. Hello, I'm Mayor Drew Combs, and I am recalling the October 7th meeting to order. This is a hybrid meeting with the City Council, city staff, and members of the public participating virtually and in City Council chambers. Please note public comment speaker time may be limited if there are more than 10 speakers on an item. We also ask that if you are in person, please submit your speaker card for all agenda items to the city clerk at this time. City Clerk Herring, would you please provide instructions to the City Council and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Combs. And again, echoing a welcome to our October 7th City Council meeting. Again, we ask that if you are in person, please submit your speaker cards for all agenda items to the city clerk at this time. For our virtual and telephone participants, when the mayor calls for comment on the item that you wish to speak on, it's at that time you can engage that hand feature or press *9. That includes my instructions. Mayor Combs, you may continue.
All right, thank you, Clerk Herring. I'd like to introduce City Attorney Doherty to report out from closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. There's no reportable action.
Okay, thanks. Agenda review provides advance notice to members of the public and city staff of any modifications to the agenda order and any requests from city council members. Does the city council wish to pull any items from the consent calendar or informational items? Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I would like to pull consent item I2 and informational item L2.
Okay, duly noted. Okay, with that, no other changes or modifications. Okay, with that, we'll move on to public comment. Under public comment, the public may address the city council on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the city council once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. Speaker time will be limited if there are more than 10 speakers. You are not required to provide your name or city of residence, but it is helpful. The city council cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the city council cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. City Clerk Herring, can you call for public comment?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Combs. So at this time, if any member of the public wishes to provide comment for an item that is not on tonight's agenda, if you're in person, complete that speaker card and bring that to me here at the clerk's desk. If you're virtual, engage that hand feature. Calling in, please press *9 now. Currently looks like we have one speaker, so this is the final call for public comment for items not on tonight's agenda. All right, so we would like to invite Pete Colby.
Good evening. I just thought I'd take the opportunity to speak. I wanted to congratulate the city on their solar panels that were installed on the library. They're quite a correct and a complete coverage of that rooftop, so it's going to get a lot of positive energy from the sun. And I also appreciate all the work that was done on the trees and the treescape along El Camino. I wanted to mention that some of the grates are being pushed out of the trees area into the sidewalks along the front of Safeway. So somebody has to go through there and remove some hazards where the trees have matured. The bus stops have been reduced to 2 bus stops through town on El Camino. One has been eliminated by the Sand Hill Hotel at the south end of town. They've left the bench there. I've sat on the bench thinking the bus would stop for me, but there's still a bench that probably could be used because there's no bench in front of the Safeway that's going north for the Samtrans. I just wanted to say that I've seen a lot of sort of fear mongering about creating more housing because of the state's mandates. And I think there's been a lot done for that in the neighboring cities. I think that the urban projects that they're building don't have as many community values for senior amenities during the day, for schools and even parking. You can't see a lot of parking around these new developments that have been done with the money from Facebook and Redwood City. I think a lot of people want to get back to nature to spend their day, and they've come down here to the Civic Center, use our library quite a bit, and it's just really more valuable to some of the people that we see every day to have nature and spaces where they can just enjoy natural life. I feel like a lot of these mandates are making people angry about cars, and they just want to develop things so people won't have the freedom to take a car if they need to use a car. If they don't have parking where they live, they're taking that opportunity away from people. So we have to consider that with these projects, that there will be people that are spending a lot of money, and will need to work probably to make some of that money. And, you know, it's a natural thing. So I'll be back. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'm seeing no further hands or cards. Mayor Combs, you may continue.
Thank you, Clerk Heron. With that, we'll move to presentations and proclamations. We have 3 proclamations and 1 presentation this evening. This first one is H1, Domestic Violence Awareness Month. City Clerk Heron, please call for public comment on H1.
Thank you, Mayor Combs. So at this time, if any member of the public wishes to provide a comment on our proclamation H1, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, if you're in person, submit that speaker card. If you're virtual, engage that hand feature. Calling in, press *9 now. This is the final call for public comment on our first proclamation H1. Seeing no hands or cards, Mayor Combs, you may continue.
All right, thank you, City Clerk Heron. Observe every October, Domestic Violence Awareness Month is an opportunity for everyone to learn about the prevalence and impacts of domestic violence. While coming together to show victims and survivors they are not alone, CORA, Community Overcoming Relationship Abuse, provides safety, support, and healing for individuals in San Mateo County who experience abuse in an intimate relationship, and educates the community to break the cycle of domestic violence. We would like to invite CORA Community Education Manager Maria Lucia Diaz to accept the proclamation.
Thank you, Mayor. So good evening, everyone. My name is Maria Luisa Diaz. I'm the Manager of Education at CORA, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. This month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. First, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to Mayor Drew Combs, the City Council, community partners, and all that are here tonight, and also on Zoom. My deepest gratitude to the City of Menlo Park for this proclamation, recognizing CORA for the work that we do in the field of domestic violence. This moment belongs not only to CORA, but to every survivor who has found a path to safety, every advocate who stands up against violence, and every community member who has chosen to speak out. This recognition is a powerful reminder that domestic violence does not just affect the people involved or the family unit. Domestic violence affects the entire community, from the workplace to schools to the neighborhoods. I would like to acknowledge Police Chief David Norris and the Menlo Park Police Department for the incredible work that they do every day. And I would also like to thank Menlo College for our continued partnership in providing education and awareness to their students and staff. CORA is the only domestic violence agency in San Mateo County. From our hotline, mental health services, legal, safe house and supportive housing services, prevention and education, all programs and services are free and confidential to the community. For anyone out there that is experiencing an abusive relationship, our hotline number is 1-800-300-1080. CORA's hotline is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have bilingual advocates on staff and a language line for those that need support. Once again, our hotline is 1-800-300-1080. I accept this proclamation on behalf of CORA's dedicated staff, volunteers, and supporters who work tirelessly for survivors day in and day out to light a way towards safety, healing, and a right to live free of fear. Thank you.
The second proclamation is H2, Latino Heritage Month. City Clerk Karen, can you please call for public comment on this item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Combs. So at this time, if any member of the public wishes to speak on our second proclamation, H2 Latino Heritage Month, if you are in person, you can complete that speaker card. Virtual, engage that hand feature. Calling in, press *9 now. This is the final call for public comment on our second proclamation, H2. Seeing no hands or cards, Mayor Combs, may
All right.
continue.
Thank you, Clerk Herring. During Latino Heritage Month, observed annually from September 15th to October 15th, we celebrate the rich history, culture, and traditions of Latino, Latina, Latinx people and acknowledge the immeasurable contributions of the Latino, Latina, Latinx community in art, science, education, activism, business, and countless other arenas, not just in Menlo Park, but across the country and all over the world. We would like to invite San Mateo County Latino, Latina, Latinx Collaborative Co-Chair, Dr. Gabriela Perez, to accept a proclamation.
Hi, good evening, everyone. We are deeply honored to receive this proclamation recognizing the Latino Heritage Month from the City of Menlo Park. On behalf of San Mateo County Latino AX Collaborative, I want to say thank you. Thank you for acknowledging the richness, resilience, and contributions of our community to our community. As co-chair, I am humbled to work alongside such an incredible group of people, leaders, advocates, healers, and neighbors who share a common mission to give voice to the Latino AX community by supporting mind, body, soul through culturally noted healthcare practices. Our goal is simple but powerful. We aim to create stronger, safer, and more resilient families through holistic practices, to promote a stigma-free environment where mental health can be talked about openly, and to ensure fair access to health and social services, regardless of insurance or background, to honor and integrate our traditional practices, our language, and our history into the systems that serve us. Because when culture and care come together, healing becomes possible. Now more than ever, we believe that services grounded in Latino AX heritage, spirituality, and family values are essential. They not only nurture individuals, they strengthen the very fabric of our families and our communities. Together with our community partners, our focus right now is simple, making sure our people have the tools they need today. One of the ways that we do this is through our annual health fair, Sana Sana, a day where we come together to celebrate wellness, connection, and hope. Sana Sana comes from a children's rhyme many of us grew up with hearing. Sana Sana colita de rana. When a child was hurt, our parents or grandparents will whisper those words to comfort us. Heal, heal, little frog's tail. And they will remind us, if you don't heal today, you will heal tomorrow. That simple phrase carries generations of wisdom. It teaches us resilience. It tells us that healing takes time and that even in pain, there is hope for tomorrow. So tonight, as we celebrate the Latino AX Heritage Month, let's carry that message forward. Let's keep healing together as one community, knowing that every effort, every voice, and every act of care brings us closer to a stronger, healthier tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Okay. The third proclamation is H3, Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Clerk Heron, can you please call for public comment on this item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Combs. So at this time, any member of the public wishing to speak on our Proclamation H3, Cybersecurity Awareness Month, if you are in person, submit that speaker card. Virtual, engage that hand feature. Calling in, press *9 now. Final call for public comment on Proclamation H3. Seeing no hands or cards, Mayor Combs, you may continue.
All right, thank you, Clerk Heron. For Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we recognize the vital importance of cybersecurity awareness and education for all community members in order to protect ourselves and our information from phishing, viruses, ransomware, and other types of malware or data loss. We would like to invite Information Technology Manager Danny Daniels to accept this proclamation.
Mayor, council members, on behalf of the city, I'm honored to accept this proclamation recognizing October as Cybersecurity Awareness Month. This acknowledgement from the City Council is not just a gesture, it's a vital statement that underscores how critically important cyber resilience is to the services we provide to the community. It's also a reminder for the community to remain vigilant against potential online, phone, and texting scams, to turn on multi-factor authentication for added security, and to never share your passwords or security codes with others. Thank you for your support.
Okay, the final item is H4, the San Francisquito Creek Reach 2 update presentation. Here to make the presentation is Executive Director of the SFC JPA, Margaret Bruce.
Good evening, Mayor Combs and members of the Menlo Park City Council. Thank you so much for welcoming me this afternoon or this evening. And thank you for everyone in the community who is here as well. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your interest. And I think it was just about a year ago, almost exactly, that I was here last time with an update. So a few things have happened since then. So I know that many of you already know about this Joint Powers Authority, but for those online or in the room who aren't acquainted with us, the Joint Powers Authority is made up of 5 members. Menlo Park is one of them. East Palo Alto, One Shoreline, and the Santa Clara Valley Water District are the other members. It was formed in 1999 following a very significant flooding event in 1998. That flooding event impacted all the jurisdictions that I mentioned, and the JPA was formed to come together to address this issue that cannot possibly be addressed by one entity alone. So we're going to spend a little time on this particular slide. Flooding has always been a problem along the San Francisquito Creek. Records going back at least 100 years reveal multiple previous attempts to coordinate flood risk reduction projects across jurisdictions. If this was easy, it would have been done a long time ago. The San Francisquito Creek JPA has completed the Reach 1 project, which opened the channel capacity downstream of Highway 101 to accommodate a 100-year flow, plus room for sea level rise. This has been like changing the shape of the channel from a wine bottle to a mason jar. The greater capacity downstream now allows more water to flow freely to the bay without backing up and causing flooding upstream of 101. This image on the screen, this great big pink sort of octopus-looking thing, is an image that is a modeled or a simulation of potential flooding extent at the level of a flood of record, or about 7,200 cubic feet per second, which is what the 1998 flood of record is estimated at, which is also considered approximately a 70-year flood. In other words, it has a statistical chance of happening once in 70 years. The goal of our Reach 2 project, that goes from Highway 101 upstream to, let's call it around Middlefield, is to protect from flooding all the properties in or touched by this area highlighted in pink. In Menlo Park, models show that there are over 800 parcels impacted to some degree by flooding at this 70-year flow level. As you will notice, the flooded areas do not follow the creek. Flooding flows away from the creek, down and across the creek's alluvial fan, impacting properties at a great distance from the creek. The 2022 New Year's Eve storm, which was considered approximately a 30-year flood, resulted in flooding at a lower flow rate than was thought to induce flooding, revealing some gaps in our knowledge about the channel and incomplete information in the hydraulic model. Knowing our project designs were now undersized for the project goals, we decided to go back to the drawing board and evaluate our options and what opportunities we had to meet the original project goals while increasing the project's final capacity by at least 25%. The JPA board reaffirmed the capacity goal of 7,200 cubic feet per second in January 2025 to be consistent with our environmental impact report goals and with Valley Water's current key performance indicators. Since the creek channel has 25% less capacity than originally thought, achieving this goal will be harder. Ideally, large projects offer other benefits in addition to protecting life, property, and infrastructure. Therefore, to the extent possible, the Reach 2 project strives to improve in-channel habitat and to protect the trees and other native vegetation of the riparian corridor and to provide recreational opportunities where feasible and appropriate. I think I went too far. Hang on a second. So this slide shows the 4 basic scenarios that were the outcome of our consultants' work looking at different potential project scenarios. After a competitive solicitation and in consultation with our members, the JPA retained WRA Incorporated to evaluate the updated hydrology and to recommend potential project scenarios meeting the project's goals. This slide represents a quick overview of the 4 alternatives described in the WRA report. The main differences between the alternatives is the action at Pope Chaucer Bridge and the extent and location of proposed widening. WRA has proposed flood walls in all 4 of these alternatives. It is important to note that the JPA is not recommending a preferred project alternative at this time. We are still exploring additional technical feasibility studies, including a tunnel bypass, and preliminary feasibility results from this study reveal that a bypass would not be able to convey all the desired flow and that it could minimize, but it would not replace the need for flood walls and bridge replacements. I think that's, oh, it went back to where I wanted to go. There we go. I apologize. Okay. So the project elements that we're looking at, WRA's rough order of magnitude estimated costs for the project elements that include widening, flood walls, and replacing the Pope Chaucer Bridge to meet the project goals would be about $122 million. These are very preliminary numbers. And yes, I know there's some sticker shock there. It's a big number. They are preliminary numbers and they will change. It's also important to note that at this point in our design process with the project, we are working with sizes and geometries, and there are no specific designs selected. So nobody is saying some feature is going to look exactly like this or exactly like that. The JPA will be working on a unified, holistic project design, but is considering a phased implementation strategy. The first phase will start with project elements within the existing environmental impact report that don't transfer risk and for which we have some grant funding. Starting with select channel widening and replacing the temporary wooden flood wall upstream of the University Avenue Bridge. This first phase would cost approximately $20 to $25 million. We have about $8 million in Department of Water Resources grant funding and have a good chance of 50-50 cost share through the Army Corps of Engineers CAP 205 program for this work. We will need to conduct a supplemental EIR for project elements outside the current EIR, including repairing or replacing old existing flood walls and installing new flood walls and perhaps for other project elements. We can begin work on a supplemental EIR once the JPA board has selected their preferred alternative, and we have a clear project description, which is usually at around the 30% design stage. This second phase of the project would include flood walls, both new flood walls where needed, and replacing the aging flood walls downstream of the Newell Road Bridge, and also replacing the Pope Chaucer Bridge. This phase of the project, hang on to your hats, over $100 million probably. It's important to note that there is no single action in all of the proposed alternative scenarios that can meet the project's goals. We have built our urban spaces right up to the banks of the creek. There are roads, there are homes, there are infrastructure, important infrastructure pieces that are very difficult to move out of the creek's way. So given those constraints, we have very limited choices. WRA's process to this point has included a careful review of the Valley Water Hydraulic Model and collaborating with the Army Corps of Engineers to certify the updated model. The WRA Alternatives Report revisited past alternatives and explored new alternatives within and outside of Reach 2. The project evaluation reconfirmed much of the previous project evaluation and design work done by Valley Water, although we now know we need to expand upon that work. In the future, the JPA board will adopt a project alternative that meets the project's goals, and we anticipate this decision in 2026. We do not have specific designs yet, but the Reach 2 project elements will probably include widening, which is helpful in all scenarios, replacing the temporary wooden flood wall along Woodland Avenue with a permanent structure, expanding the project geography to include the Middlefield Rd Bridge area because we have in our updated modeling learned that there is breakout there too. Implementing flood walls, which will probably be a mixed set of designs to be as sensitive as possible to logistical, environmental, and aesthetic considerations, while also effectively mitigating flood risks, and replacing the Pope Chaucer Bridge. We know that community members are very concerned about the visual appearance of flood walls and the potential negative impacts flood wall construction can have on trees at the top of the creek bank. We are sensitive to these concerns, and everyone on the project team is taking those into account. Preliminary analysis that's available in the WRA draft report shows flood wall heights in Menlo Park varying from a maximum of about 5 feet to a minimum of about 1.5 feet, depending on the variations in bank top terrain. This is not a fixed design, and these are estimates, and these numbers will change when we review designs against the Army Corps Certified Hydrologic Model and as our project design evolves and is further refined. Our current project activities include some additional analysis. Bypass tunnels were evaluated as part of the 2019 Environmental Impact Report, and at that time were deemed infeasible. However, there are some new technologies which make a high-level evaluation of the viability of one or more tunnel bypass options worthwhile. Similarly, the use of permanent passive flood barriers was not evaluated in the 2019 EIR. These have been deployed successfully elsewhere and used in combination with other elements may be a helpful addition to the REACH 2 project as we consider how to integrate flood protection and pedestrian and public safety access. These flood walls remain underground or lie flat under normal conditions, but raise up under water pressure during high water events. There may be also opportunities to include fish-friendly flow detention structures in the channel upstream of the urban area. These won't add capacity, but they dampen peak flows. The results of the bypass study will be completed by the end of October, and other evaluations, if they're necessary, will be included in WRA's scope of work going forward. Our anticipated next steps. So this on this slide is a very high-level overview of next steps. Planning and design, final alternatives evaluation report, board selection of their preferred components of a project, Army Corps of Engineers, Continuing Authorities Program 205, which will integrate REACH 2 project components in the part they fund, developing cost share principles and frameworks for the 5 JPA members, moving forward with CEQA, advancing design and engineering, and implementing a supplemental EIR. So there are a couple of other things, an arborist survey, and of course, very importantly, project-related community outreach. So we have a busy year ahead of us, and that's all that's my formal presentation. I want to thank my staff, Tess Byler and Deneen Nee, project managers who are active and support this project, the REACH 2 project, and our fabulous Miko Harris-Parker, who handles the backbone of the organization, without whom I couldn't function. So thank you all for your time and attention, and I'd be delighted to take any questions.
First, Clerk Karen, can we call for a public comment on this item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Combs. So at this time, if any member of the public wishes to provide comment on our presentation H4, San Francisquito Creek REACH 2 update, if you're in person, submit that speaker card. If you are virtual, engage that hand feature. Calling in, press *9 now. Looks like we have currently 2 speakers. So this will be the final call for public comment on our presentation item H4. And our first speaker will be Jerry Hearn, followed by Naomi Goodman.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs and Council, for this opportunity tonight. My name is Jerry Hearn. I'm a resident of the Upper Watershed in Portola Valley. I want to first of all start by thanking Margaret for this very succinct presentation and very useful, and also for her entire intrepid band, very small intrepid band of San Francisquito Creek JPA employees who've done remarkable work over the years. A little bit of background about me. I've been involved in creek issues for 35 years. This San Francisquito Creek. On the ground, I've been involved in plantings, non-native removals, cleanups, things like that. But in the policy area, I was one of the people who started up the Watershed Council. I was co-chair of the Searsville committee for Stanford, and I've been working with the JPA staff and agency staff for all these years. So I have a lot of background to share whenever it's necessary. During these years, I employed 3 basic principles that I tried to use to guide my efforts. The first one was I saw the watershed as a community of all species and all jurisdictions. All those species and all those jurisdictions must be given voice, and they must be listened to in an equitable fashion. The second is I believe that no transfer of flood and erosion risk should happen either upstream or downstream. And the third is the areas of focus that I think our project should take: flood and erosion control, habitat stewardship and restoration, and recreation. Now, as I think back over these years, sometimes it feels like this has been going on forever and there's no end in sight, but in actuality, we've made a huge amount of progress. I turn first to the Beta 101 project, which is a very complicated project, and it was very successful in providing flood management protection to some of our most vulnerable communities. And at the same time, it increased recreation opportunities and made substantial improvements to the habitat down there. There's been a lot of habitat work. El Palo Alto Park, right across from it, is a little Menlo Park place. I'm not sure the name of it anymore, but I've been out there a lot. Hundreds of creek cleanups, hundreds of work days, community work days where people have pitched in to improve the habitat and to improve the creek for the human beings who live in the watershed. Upstream, Stanford has done an awful lot of work to improve fish habitat, removing weirs, little dams, and Searsville is still in the offing, and we wonder what's going to happen there. My last thing I want to say is the Reach 2 project is a challenge like none other that we've seen due to its complexity and restraints. I suggest that we continue using these principles that I've laid out there as they've served us well. We can only achieve a solution, I think, with compromise. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now our next speaker is Naomi Goodman.
Thank you. Members of the City Council, my name's Naomi Goodman. I'm a 35-year resident of the Willows neighborhood. My house faces the creek across Woodland Avenue. I have two questions for the JPA project staff about the alternatives described in the WRA report. First, do any of the four alternatives require encroachment onto the right-of-way of Woodland Avenue? It was mentioned in a news article on a previous presentation that the street might lose a traffic lane. That's unacceptable. Woodland is very busy during commute hours, and it's an alternative route for emergency vehicles when Willow or University is jammed. Secondly, how did the four alternatives achieve the project's stated goal to enhance habitat within the project area, particularly interconnected habitat for threatened and endangered species? Environmental considerations should not be limited to only threatened and endangered species. Over 100 bird species have been observed in this stretch of the creek. In dry months, the creek bed is a travel route from the hills to the bay for coyotes, deer, raccoons, opossum, foxes, and skunks, among others. Vertical sheet walls and flood walls higher than a few feet will prevent movement of mammals in and out of the creek bed. If they can't climb out, animals are likely to drown or die by starvation. Pets would also be at risk if they become trapped in the creek bed. In summary, the WRA alternatives ranking scheme does not give enough weight to limiting environmental damage and restoring and maintaining wildlife habitat. Please modify the ranking percentages to more accurately reflect the value of this resource to both people and wildlife. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further hands or cards, Mayor Combs, you may continue.
Right, thank you, Clerk Heron, and thank you, Mr. Hearns and Ms. Goodman, for your public comments. There's some questions. I'll turn it to to Executive Director Bruce to answer.
So first, to address Mr. Hearn's comments, thank you. Flood and erosion control, habitat, and recreation are certainly woven into our Reach 2 project. And to address Ms. Goodman's comments and questions. The proposal that you saw in the article that looked at utilizing one lane of Woodland Avenue in the event of, it was one scenario that we were looking at that would have protected the trees at the top of the bank, but sacrifice the lane. It is only one option. We're talking geometries at this point. We're talking capacities at this point. Where the alignment, exactly where the top of bank structures would live is not selected. It is a trade-off option. Yes, it is a serious consideration. Woodland Avenue is narrow, sinuous. The line of sight is very limited. It is a very busy thoroughfare. So there are definite downsides to using Woodland Avenue as a floodway in an emergency. There are other drawbacks to using top of bank structures on the top of bank. They, again, could potentially have environmental impacts, line of sight impacts, tree impacts, and we're very cognizant of all of those. You make a very good point, Ms. Goodman, about the limitations of flood walls, sheet pile walls, and other structures in and next to the creek channel, and their potential to impede the process of movement for animals in the creek channel. Widening structures, which may very likely use sheet pile walls, are not going to be contiguous throughout the channel. There are selected locations where the channel is quite narrow. Maybe it's because somebody has built a thing in the channel, or maybe it's just a naturally narrow place, and we want to be able to widen it in those selected places. Widening is very expensive. Widening is very disruptive. But the more widening we do, the lower the flood walls need to be. So there is kind of an optimization trade-off. We don't want to be doing work that is going to impede all of the creatures in the watershed. We, together with Jerry Hearn, are very committed to, yes, this is for all the creatures, all the inhabitants of the watershed, and humans are just one among them. So we're very cognizant of it will have, our structures as proposed will have impacts, and we will take to heart your request that we look at a ranking structure that further acknowledges potential impacts to wildlife, not just listed species. To go back to the sheet pile wall structures in the creek channel, Ms. Goodman, you may or may not know that our regulatory agencies take that very seriously. Those impacts to the listed species and all species have to be addressed in how we build those structures. It happens that when you drive those sheet piles into the creek structure, the creek bank at the side of the channel, there is enough potential deflection or movement of that structure that you need to put something at the toe of the bank, at the bottom of the bank to secure it. Those places are our opportunities to put large woody structures. Maybe it's a log crib wall, maybe it's a root wad system. It helps anchor the sheet pile wall, but it also makes it more natural in the experience of the creatures who are using the channel for fish passage or for dry season migration. So we're hoping that a design with nature approach can address the concerns that we have to make sure that the creek channel continues its natural functions, all of them, and that we have adequate flood protection designed. I hope that answers your questions.
Okay, bringing it back to the dais. Are there any council questions for Ms. Bruce?
Thank you for the presentation. I just had one out of curiosity. On the anticipated next step slides, I think it was more an offhand comment, but you said it would be a busy year. Are most of those next steps going to happen in the 2026 timeframe, or are those all spaced out over a 3 or 4 year period?
Those on the list are anticipated for this fiscal year, so calendar year 25, 26.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you. So the decision as far as which of the scenarios will be likely in 2026?
Yes, that's correct. We have some reports that we need to complete. For example, that study on the bypass options, as well as some other preliminary design work to show sort of the bookends, if you will, of tentative. So let me back up a second. We are still scoping the work for our consultant for this fiscal year. When that scope of work is finalized and our JPA board approves it, they will launch into these studies. We're looking at bookends within their scope of work. So what if we did something that was, if possible, all widening, no flood walls? And what if we did something that was all flood walls and no widening, if that's possible? And here are some scenarios in between where we look at some optimization of, how much widening where or how much flood wall where, so that the board has some opportunity to do some mix and match and pick a scenario that seems to be the least bad and the most protective and provide the most co-benefits for what we have.
Thank you.
A couple of questions from me. So to be clear, like all of the Reach 2 work has to happen after the Newell Bridge is replaced in Palo Alto. Is that correct?
Yes, and they've done some preliminary work already, and they plan to go to construction and complete construction in 2027, I believe,
Okay, so
or 2026, no, next summer, pardon me.
And so any initiation of construction on any of the Reach 2 projects, even if it's the no regrets work, or certainly some of the more substantive work, has to happen after that project is completed, or?
That is very likely, but we are also asking WRA to use the updated model to run some sensitivity analyses to see if we can do some out of phase, if you will, work. So can we, for example, take it, if the timing works out with the Army Corps of Engineers and their CAP study, can we do that work first and widen downstream at sites 3 and 4, which are downstream of the University Avenue Bridge later? Just to make sure that, if we can do it without transferring risk, do we have some schedule flexibility there to coincide with when we have the money or when we have a grant freshness date? So that sensitivity analysis will confirm, but yes, generally speaking, you want to work downstream to upstream, and we want to make sure that that work downstream is done first, so we don't end up having creating a shift of risk from one part of the community to another.
Thank you. For those of you who may not know, so I'm the representative for Menlo Park on the Creek JPA board and have been for I think six years now. And I know, Ms. Bruce, you've made these presentations to I think are we the last JPA member, or you have one more to do, or a couple?
Santa Clara Valley Water District on
Okay.
October 28th.
Okay, so you've done this presentation to East Palo Alto City Council, the Palo Alto City Council, and
the board at One
Shoreline Board. And so there was and feel free to correct me if your understanding is different. I think there was a press account that had outlined that you had been asked the question essentially like, well, what would Menlo Park be okay with? And your response was, well, I don't know what Menlo Park would be okay with. Is that roughly your understanding of, was that press account accurate or not accurate?
I'm not remembering the article, so I can't speak specifically to that article.
Is it then so to the heart of that issue is like, as you sit here, do you feel that there's some ambiguity on your end of like what project or what key elements or aspects of a project of which you feel that you don't know what Menlo Park would be comfortable with or supportive of, and you do feel for other members of the JPA, you do have that?
We have heard community members express their sincere concerns about flood walls. That being said, we are very aware of those sensitivities. We are very aware that there are construction impacts, there may be tree impacts, there may be visual impacts. And it's hard sell You know, it's a really difficult thing, especially when you look at that flood map and you see, okay, here's this huge pink stripe of where the water is going, and it's away from the edge of the creek. The people who are living right next to the creek are going to have the impact of seeing the flood wall, having the construction there. And that's hard to swallow, because what benefit are they getting of that construction? It's people who are half a mile away who may be having the benefit of the flood risk reduction project. So we understand there is some sensitivity there. But I think that sensitivity exists in Palo Alto as well. The people who are right next to the creek have expressed sincere concerns about, you know, please don't mess with my property right next to the creek. I don't flood. So there's always this tension between how do you create a project that is absolutely going to be in someone's face and may not benefit them, but it benefits a larger group of people. There's always that tension, and I am very sensitive to it.
Okay. One question in your presentation, you mentioned that the scope may need to expand to include Middlefield. And that's something of which there hasn't been any cost estimates yet, or please correct me if there have. What's your response to the concern, going back to community concerns, that this project seems to be always evolving? What the actual flow capacity of the creek is something that is always evolving, has been evolving. What is, I think, to the point of like what Menlo Park would be comfortable with, my response is always, I don't know what the project is. So I don't know what I can tell my constituents, like, to give them some sense of to gauge what they might and might not be comfortable with. Again, when I first joined the JPA, a key aspect of flood mitigation was upstream efforts. And over time, we seem to have evolved to not focus on those upstream efforts as much. And so that's something that has changed. And so I think that, to wrap up my observations in a question, there's certainly some concern and uncertainty about, yes, looking at a wall, like, right. I think the key concern is, like, is that wall necessary? And do I have faith in the people in the organizations that tell me it's necessary, when over the past 8 years, there's been little that they seem to have been certain about? And so then again, another key element here is now the expansion to Middlefield. And it may be very necessary. I'm not an engineer. But then what's to take that maybe we need to also expand to El Camino, like, right? And again, we have money for none of this, to be clear. And so that is, just to be clear, the concern that I hear. It is, to be frank, a lack of trust in the institution and the agency that is saying that this is necessary because of that track record. And so how do you respond to that? Like, right, how do you, what's your response that this really is it, guys? This is the project. Just let me get Middlefield. I'm going to add on Middlefield, and then you know, maybe some places it may be 5 feet high, maybe some places it may be, you know, a little less. And I don't mean to make light of it, but these are the real concerns that I get when I talk about constituents, because I think that they could be comfortable with, when you ask where is Menlo Park at, what would it be comfortable with? I think it'd be comfortable with a lot, but I think the discomfort is with who's telling them this. And the who is not you specifically, but the organization. And there is a track record there. You can.
So there was a lot to take in there, and I'm going to go back and try and address some of the issues. But first, I want to say, yes, I'm with you. This, for me, has felt like trying to nail Jell-O to the wall. It's been a moving target from my first day. The moving targetness increased when New Year's Eve happened. And you would say, well, you know, Valley Water has this sophisticated model. How did you not know that we were going to have a flood at that level? And the only way I have been able to understand and explain it is we have had 3 or 4 solid flooding event data points to add to that model. So it's a little bit like looking at a video game from 1985. It's very pixelated information. As we've integrated the information we gained from what happened on New Year's Eve, our detail, our resolution of this image of the creek has improved. We have more information about how it behaves, about its capacity, about where it's tight, about where it's broad, about where it dumps its sediment and leaves it behind. Taking that information has meant, like I said in my presentation, reevaluating the designs that we had ready to go. We were at 90% design in December. We could have been in construction by now. But that showed us that would be premature. We would be leaving our communities underprotected and would not meet our project goals. So to stop there and sort of hold that thought for a moment, you also brought up the really important point about, so what's happening upstream? Stanford University controls the lands that we would need to use for a detention area. We did a preliminary feasibility study of excavating an area on what was the old Bothing Nursery, which was deemed the most suitable location for a detention basin, an offline place where you could shunt water from the creek at a high flow, let it sit, and then let it out again after the peak had gone by. I think the most capacity we could get out of that entire space was less than 800 cubic feet per second, and we're looking for 1,800. So at a cost of 80 to 120 million, you're not getting even half the detention capacity that you're looking for to do flood protection. So is it worth taking off the table? Maybe not. Is it a top priority? Maybe not. It would depend on the good graces of Stanford University to think it was a good idea for them too. It is private property. The process of eminent domain with Stanford University would be lengthy and complex, probably costly. So it's a trade-off. Do we set that aside and say, okay, now we know what this can get us and about how much it would cost? Maybe we should apply our time and effort to see what we can do with what we have. Valley Water had some really good designs, and we can start there. We know it's not enough, but we can build on that. Start there and build on that. We know we have some new ideas that we're looking at, or resurfacing the idea of a bypass. I'm not optimistic that that's cost effective either. We're looking at 3 different technology types. One of them is right off the bat infeasible. The large boring requirements for space where you put the boring machine in and get the tunnel started are huge. There is no space in our urban landscapes for those kinds of actions. There's directional tunneling and microtunneling, and both of those are probably technically feasible. They are similarly space constrained, but not as bad as the big tunneling machines. But they don't offer the conveyance capacity. We, again, would be in the realm of, you know, I think, if I recall correctly, about 500 to 800 cubic feet per second. So we're still missing 1,000 feet of capacity. And I don't know what the cost estimates are going to be. That's forthcoming in this report at the end of the month. But it wouldn't replace the need for replacing the bridge and some flood walls. So it's highly expensive, highly intrusive.
But you could need less flood walls, right?
Hypothetically, yeah. And you could take water out above Middlefield and take it all the way to downstream of the Newell Road Bridge through Palo Alto under public right-of-ways. Again, not without significant cost and disruption, but technically it seems like at least that is feasible. We're still waiting on the price tag. And the movement of what is this project is largely from the outcome of the New Year's Eve storm. We learned a lot. Technologies have evolved. Regulatory agencies have not exactly relaxed their expectations. And we have moving grant opportunities, and those grant opportunities also have some ticking freshness dates. So all of those things are in play. I'm just sympathizing with you. Yes, it's a moving target and like pinning down Jell-O.
Yeah, no, please go.
Thanks. So this was sort of scratching at the back of my brain, and so I figured I would just maybe like to know that when you mentioned about, I'm worried about the costs and this idea that the cost sharing principles and framework, we would develop that in the next kind of coming year. So I was just, as you were answering that question, I just did a back of the envelope kind of calculation. And if we used a principle of how many properties are affected and use that as a percentage, and I know that might not be how you do it, but just as one exercise, that would give Menlo Park about 17% of the total cost, EPA about 25%, and Palo Alto about 58%. If you take your 122 million and you break that down, that's a price tag for us of $20.7 million. Talk about sticker shock for Palo Alto, that's about $71 million. So let's be generous and say your 122 was way too high. Let's cut it in half. That's still a $10 million hit for us at some point. So I'm just curious how you see all that playing out, because coming up with a cost sharing principle and framework within the next year to get these 3 cities who are already under budget pressure to agree to a $10 to $20 million price tag for us, and, you know, heaven help Palo Alto a $70 million price tag. If that was the way we did it, those are really big numbers per city. So does that just put a halt to the project overall? I'm just curious how you're thinking about that.
There's one party in there you're missing. I'll let Ms. Bruce.
Oh, is that Stanford?
Well, one with money, with lots of money.
Yeah.
So there is one other party that is here to help. The Santa Clara Valley Water District has a countywide parcel assessment, Measure S, the Safe Clean Water and Natural Flood Protection Project or program, provides us with some funding. I think right now we are, over the course of time, the pool of money for this project has dwindled, but they're bringing, let's say, for our part of the Reach 2 project, and this is in addition to their contribution to the Newell Road Bridge, they're bringing, just for round numbers, let's say $10 million. We have about an $8 million grant from Department of Water Resources. The Army Corps of Engineers is bringing about $10 million to the table. That assumes that our economics pencil out. There's a Prop 4 grant opportunity. So part of what we do at the JPA is also go, tin cupping for grants, and there are going to be grant opportunities. It is still sticker shock. So it might be helpful to think about this in terms of the project doesn't happen all at once. So it happens over a course of years. It's not going to happen for a couple of years. So there's time to lay some tracks before somebody has to write a check. And I'm also looking at state, private, and federal financing opportunities. Just as one example, the United States Environmental Protection Agency administers something called a WIFIA loan, the Water Infrastructure Financing Infrastructure Act loan. Those are low-interest loans structured to be as completion of the loan payment out as far as 35 years. They are extremely accommodating in their loan terms. And those kinds of financing opportunities, along with whatever cash on the barrelhead member agencies can put up, together with grants, together with Army Corps, together with the Safe Clean Water from Valley Water. It's not that it isn't daunting, but you're not alone. There will be other pieces to help close the gap.
Maybe a different way to say it. So I appreciate that. And I was trying to add up the numbers as you were going and figuring that out. So there still may be a little bit of sticker shock. It's not the way I calculated it. You're going to be tin cupping it as you go. Grant funding may change over a period of time. So it sounds like then the number, like unlike other projects that we have in the city that we've been wanting to do for a long time, the funding number is probably not going to be the biggest barrier. You're saying we'll probably figure it out as we go. We're still going to have a bill at some point to foot, which we'll need to figure out. But it's probably more the agreement on the design and everything else. I guess what I looked at the funding as the biggest constraint because I was just doing the numbers. Based on what you're saying, it's probably project design and getting the jurisdictions to agree that's going to be the bottleneck, or what's going to be the thing that sort of slows it all down?
I wish I could answer that question because, my magic 8-ball says reply hazy, ask again later.
Okay. Yeah.
I would have thought that the funding stuff would be the sticking point, but I think you're right. I think some of the project design stuff is, all of those trade-offs between, I would really like this to be critter friendly, but that's the most expensive option. I'm pressed because my city has limited resources and many competition, a lot of competition for limited resources. So how do I make that trade-off? I think those are going to be the hardest conversations.
Okay, thank you.
If I can chime in, I do think though that they are interrelated. You are you're willing to pay more for something you like, than something that you don't like. If you don't like it, then you're probably going to be focused on saying that you don't want to pay for it. And so I think there goes, the causality connection or the correlation. I do think it is, and again, one of the things I've been pushing on as a member of the JPA is a design and work, at least initially, of which there is optimal agreement as you start off on this process, where then I do think you can, you're likely to get the resistance just based on people not wanting to pay the money, but not based on seeing some future state of their neighborhood of which they find incredibly, distasteful. And so I think that's the balance. But again, there is, the JPA is a small agency and doesn't have access to a large bank account. And so I think, critical key aspect of this is where the money comes from, because even as Ms. Bruce lays out the puzzle pieces, there is still going to be a pretty decent financial obligation on the residents of Menlo Park at the end of the day.
That was my worry. Yeah, even if
Your worry, yeah.
even if the $20 million ask didn't materialize, it was half the cost. It's still a $10 million ask, and that's a big number. So,
and my concern, to which the Vice Mayor pointed out, is yes, you can sort of pay in and we can do a layaway plan, right? But in infrastructure, putting something off is ensuring that it will cost more. So the best time to build a subway was 100 years ago.
And to that point, I had a conversation with Melanie Richardson, who is the acting executive director at the Santa Clara Valley Water District. And she was cautioning, she said, our project estimates are starting to come in 25, 35, 40% over our engineers' estimates. Project costs are accelerating. So I can't even tell, in addition to the nailing Jello to the wall aspect of this project, I have that metronome in the back of my head saying, every month that we protract our decision-making or have to wait for regulators' approval or whatever it is, It's like hearing the taxi cab meter of yore keep tripping. It just gets more expensive. So absolutely, you are right. And we've got numbers out there demonstrating that that's right.
Maybe one more question.
Yeah.
So do we have that layaway plan? I don't know why I'm looking at you, but
I'm
is there-
going to turn to the city manager. And obviously, he can only speak to Menlo Park's preparation.
Correct. Specific to Menlo Park, there is no layaway plan, so that would be something that would need to be worked out in the future.
I mean, as in no way, there's no money set aside.
Correct.
Yeah.
Very, very nominal amount that I think will be going towards this upcoming analysis that's going to be done. So effectively no money for construction.
Okay. Well, I think we'll end on that note unless there are any other comments. Thank you, Ms. Bruce, for the time.
My pleasure. And thank you very much for the excellent questions. It's been my pleasure.
Okay, we'll move on to the consent calendar. Under the consent calendar, the city council may take action to approve routine business items in one motion unless a city council member, city staff member, or a member of the public requests that an item be discussed or continued to a later date. We're going to call for public comment on the consent calendar. The vice mayor has asked that we move or remove I2, right, from the consent calendar. So there's only I1, but we'll take public comment on both items, and then we'll vote on I1, and then just because you want to vote separate, or okay, all right, then let's take public comment, and then we'll have the I2 discussion.
Thank you, Mayor Combs. So at this time, for any member of the public who wishes to provide comment on any of our consent calendar items, I2, City Council meeting minutes, or I1, City Council meeting minutes, and I2, the Parkline Master Plan Project. If you are in person, return a speaker card here to me. If you are virtual, engage that hand faker. And if calling in, please press *9 now. Looks like we have 2 speakers currently. So this is the final call for public comment on our consent calendar items I1 and I2. Okay, we will turn to our 2 speakers. They're both speaking on item I2. We will start with Pete Colby and then Steve Schmidt.
You've gotten to know me a little bit. I'm not an expert on developments, but I was kind of baffled by these schematics and drawings that were handed out last week. And when I think about the pedestrian activity that goes on around this part of the city, I think the developers trying to take advantage of the high school age opportunities for possibly a soccer field or more space to cut through, and how they're promoting it as a public benefit. But I'm concerned that if you look at these drawings, they really are meant to confuse you when you see a soccer field that doesn't show up on the overall picture of the development. It's just that you saw last week there were property owners that are on Middlefield between the Geological Survey and the corner by the high school that are concerned about a road that's actually their own property, that they don't want vehicles cutting through and making it hard for their tenants. And the 3 parking garages, there's one that's already been designated by them, and they say that the dedicated garage closest to Burgess Classics neighborhood is for office use only, workers only. And he mentioned, the representative of Parkline said that it's going to be empty at night, and they'll turn the lights down and, trying to appease the property owners nearby. That's the only garage that's close to all these properties that are supposed to be residential. So obviously these projects they're building are going to be for supposedly people that don't really need to have a car parked on the property. That's how it looks to me. The only other parking garages are clear over by the high school on Middlefield. That's a long way to walk and leave your car all night. out in the open in a parking garage when you live down here on Laurel. So, you know, it's going to take time to make these things a happy balance. Thank you.
Next speaker is Steve Schmidt.
Good evening, Council. I'm Steve Schmidt, 50-year resident of Menlo Park. The Parkline project is complicated and loaded with uncertainty as far as I can tell. But the biggest fly in the ointment are the buildings P, T, and S that exist that are operated by SRI. SRI wants to keep using these buildings. The Parkline office park and the 800 units, housing units, had to be designed around these buildings. So there's uncertainty surrounding these buildings and the use of these buildings. Right now, SRI plans on using them for an uncertain amount of time. Uncertainty in a development that is this big is not good. The city needs certainty, the residents need certainty, your constituents need certainty. I think the wisest approach to this project, and you can still alter the development agreement, is to separate buildings P, S, and T from your approval tonight and require SRI to come back and make a new application for the use of the site of these buildings. It could be next year, it could be in 10 years, and the city may be dealing with a different set of decision makers and different priorities. So Lane Partners proposed a reduction in office. We should thank them for doing that. And when SRI is ready to demolish these 3 buildings, you should require a new application, and it should be welcomed. It's clear from the sentiments expressed during this approval process that housing is a popular option. I would prefer housing, and once SRI is done with these buildings and they're demolished, the city should process a new application and favor housing for that development. So good luck on making this right or better, and stay tuned. We'll stay tuned. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further hands or cards, Mayor Combs, you may continue.
Thank you, Clerk Heron. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. So I pulled I2 in order to elicit information that all parties and the public can be clear on. While I hear unanimous excitement about the 800 housing units, I still hear questions about the non-residential components, and that is the focus here. I want the public to hear answers from staff and the developer directly. This Parkline development will span decades with multiple councils and staff changes, so clarity for the community and our successors is important. Some of the confusion arises from Parkline's August 4th, 2025 project description letter, which stated that the non-residential cap would be about 713,000 square feet. Since then, plans for buildings P, S, and T, which total about 287,000 square feet, have changed. The EIR was prepared assuming those buildings would remain. Now there are plans to demolish them and repurpose the square footage to new non-residential buildings. The purpose of my questions are for all parties to have a clear and common understanding. So here are my questions. The first one is, what is the maximum amount of non-residential development on this approximately 62-acre site?
Good evening, Mayor Combs and council members. I'm Karina Sandmeyer, Principal Planner with Community Development. So Vice Mayor Nash, thank you for your question. With the inclusion of the 201 Ravenswood site, the total project site is approximately 64 acres. And the maximum amount of non-residential development is 1 million square feet. And that's both for the approvals last week and for the potential modified project.
Thank you. So of the million square feet of non-residential development, what is the maximum possible amount of office and research and development space?
Yes, so 925,000 square feet, including 287,000 square feet in existing buildings, PS and T, are included in that limit of 925,000 square feet. So if buildings PS and T remain, there would only be an additional 638,000 square feet of office and R&D development. If those three existing buildings are removed, that's square footage that can be replaced with other office and R&D development.
Thank you. What is the maximum possible amount of other non-residential development?
So the other non-residential development would be 75,000 square feet if the full 925,000 square feet of office and research and development space is developed. If less than 925,000 square feet of office and R&D development occurs, those 75,000 square feet of other non-residential square footage could be increased, but that would require an amendment to the CDP and related environmental review.
So it would take an amendment to go beyond the 75,000 square feet?
Yes, the 75,000 square feet of commercial amenity or commercial retail, yes.
Thank you. And could you please explain what development falls into that category? And how does that fit into the DA's project phasing?
Yeah, so the commercial amenity or commercial retail space falls into the non-residential total. The phasing doesn't differentiate between the type of non-residential development. It's just non-residential or residential.
Thank you. And can you give an example of the community amenity? What sort of space that would be?
One example would be the plans show an office amenity building. So that would be part of that. I believe part of it may be amenity just for workers, and part of the proposal would be a restaurant or cafe that the public could use.
So it could be for the public, some will be for the public, and some could be just for the workers there.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Why don't these changes trigger the need for a new EIR?
So the project that's being considered for final approval tonight was studied in the final EIR, and that analyzed a higher amount of non-residential square footage, approximately 1.1 million new residential plus the existing 287,000 square feet in PS&T. So that means the impacts in the final EIR are overly conservative in relation to the impacts of the project. If there's a modified project in the future, that would require its own CEQA review.
So does it matter for this original EIR that the uses have changed within the non-residential buildings?
No, and I don't believe so, because part was always commercial amenity or commercial retail. That was always considered a part of the project. And there's now just less office and R&D space.
And so the fact that it went from 25,000 to 75,000 is covered by what has already been studied?
Yeah, I believe that originally it was about 45,000 and
Okay,
then,
you're right.
yeah, and then increased to 75,000. So I don't think the 30,000, that 30,000 square feet change from office or R&D to retail or commercial amenity would have an impact.
Thank you. Will the modified project approval be required for redevelopment of buildings PS&T, or how will the redevelopment be?
Yeah, modifications to the approvals would be necessary for redevelopment of PS&T, and that would include CEQA review.
And will there be public hearings with that as part of the
Yes, those
CEQA
would,
review?
it would be an amendment to the CDP requiring Planning Commission review, Housing Commission review, and then City Council review and approval.
Thank you. And my final question is, to what aspects of this development does the city's fast track approval apply?
Yeah, so the fast track approval that's included in the DA only applies to the extent that there is a cessation of use of buildings PS&T and a request to increase the number of housing units. Modified project, which includes the limitations on the non-residential square footage, is kind of described above. So it has to include the housing.
It has to include the housing, and did I catch that it also has to include the demolition of PS&T?
Actually, it's P or S&T.
Oh, P
Yes.
or S&T. And so just bringing forward housing does not trigger the fast track?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand. So the demolition of PS&T or PSRT or PST is that doesn't require any additional approvals by council, right? Just the demolition of that, because that would then put that square footage in play.
Well, I suppose potentially not the demolition, but if redeveloping that square footage would require an amendment to the CDP, which requires council approval.
Yeah, but you can just demolish it and you've freed up that square footage, which you could put other places, correct? Not, we're going to leave PS&T alone, but we're going to demolish it. And so we've gotten that square footage, that office square footage. I then now, under what council approved last week, they have all the approval they need to do 1 million square foot, roughly, other places, like right on the campus, as long as PS&T is at least demolished or taken offline, however that.
No, I believe for redevelopment, it would still be a change to the CDP because the CDP is now tied to the plans that were submitted. And so there would be changes to the site plan and that sort of thing.
So moving that density to the other buildings, the new buildings, that PS&T, again, because if PS&T still exists as it currently exists now, they can only do 700,000 square footage of new office or non-residential. And so, again, I know they can't redevelop PS&T without additional approvals because we don't even know what that is. But could they demolish it and then make that, again, that square footage available other places before they even worry about what they're going to do? And maybe they're okay with PS&T being in a future, like a future issue. But what they really want to do is to unlock that square footage. And I'm just trying to understand, like, what would they have to do to avail themselves of that scenario? Or you can tell me, hey, Drew, that's not even a real scenario. That won't happen for such and such reasons.
Yeah. Maybe I'm not completely understanding, because if just unlocking the square footage doesn't help anything, I mean, it doesn't allow the developer to do anything, because approval for any use of that square footage would require an amendment to the CDP.
Okay. So you're saying, so just demolishing PS&T does not immediately make that available anywhere else in the project?
No, I don't believe so, since the CDP references the site plan that was submitted, and redeveloping the square footage elsewhere would mean a different site plan.
Site plan. Okay. Then my question, I know, is that since it seems like the usage of PS&T or that square footage requires additional amendments, or excuse me, like additional action, but the developer was very insistent that the million be like the cap and not the 700,000. And if there are these additional hurdles, then I don't understand the resistance to that. Because they're like, million, if we don't get the million, it's a more challenging project to get financed. And again, in theory, like they're not accessing that full million unless they come before. It just requires additional council action. And so again, it could just be me that's confused, but it's just trying to like just sort of understand like how it works together. I take the developer at their word. I know you guys have all put time and effort into this, a lot more than I have. And so, but that's just one of the things that for me is just like sort of a little murky.
Yeah, I think, well, certainly PS&T are still in use and can continue to be used. I think it might be a question for the developer, what they're thinking in terms of that, the use of those buildings and for how long.
I'm okay. Not having.
Good evening, everybody. This is Mark Murray with Lane Partners. Thank you, Council, for the clarifying questions, and thank you to staff for their responses. So, and just to, reiterate kind of the greater context here, the nuances that I think are responsible for these questions are the result of, a major concession we made just in the last few months of eliminating 380,000 square feet of potential commercial development on the site. And part of that concession, we asked for the ability to have fast-tracked approvals to add housing, but also some latitude on how we can future-proof the site to get to something we think is financeable. We have made no, proclamation that we're removing PS&T. We don't know if we ever will, but we're trying to future-proof these approvals to maintain financeability, but also to have some flexibility to ultimately, we have, a limited amount of commercial square footage. We're going to come back with a revised CDP that has a full discretionary review process. So we'll be back in front of you with any of those changes. But it's a very meaningful legal right to have those vested rights to that commercial square footage. But ultimately, we'll still be coming back to, where the buildings go, what they look like, how much housing we could add. That will all be back in front of Planning Commission and Council in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Murray.
This has triggered one more question for me, and that is, why are we requiring the removal of, in order to add more housing and use the fast track, why is that contingent upon the removal of either P or S&T, as opposed to just a fast tracking housing, additional housing beyond the 800 units?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So the way the DA is set up, it does require removal of P or S&T and additional housing for that expedited process that's outlined in the DA. Certainly, if there's a project submitted just with additional housing, we would process that in a timely manner as well.
Is that worth adding to the, I would agree. And I assume that my colleagues would agree. Is that worth adding to the DA, or? just to make crystal clear again for any future councils.
Well, since this is the second reading, I want the city attorney to tell me whether that's even okay or not.
We would probably come back.
Could I hear from Mr. Murray whether that's something that would be desirable?
I'm a little confused. My understanding is that the fast track is predicated upon adding housing with required BMR and has no relation to that's not how we intended it because we don't know the future of PS&T. So I would ask maybe staff to clarify that.
Kyle Barada, Assistant Community Development Director. I can take that one. So appreciate the applicant's response there. I think the way that the development agreement was negotiated throughout the process didn't explicitly make that clear that adding housing alone and retaining PS&T could be an expedited process. We do have online as well our city attorney, project attorney Michael Biddle, who can also speak to this if necessary. And I might look to our city clerk to promote him as well while I'm responding. But as far as the city's perspective, we were looking at it as a modified project that was more comprehensive in nature to get the expedited review, and that is the housing with the cessation and removal of P or S&T. Certainly can't explore that further, but it would be a change to the D. I think the sentiments are clear to staff, and so with a modified project that retained PS&T and add housing, while we're not obligated under the development agreement contractually to process it in an expedited manner, I think we can take the cues this evening and take those notes to expedite a housing increase with the remaining or retention, of PS&T in a similar expedited manner without it being in the DA.
Yeah, and I think my initial question would be towards, because in theory, this grants more optionality to the developer, but then he wouldn't get the second reading finalized tonight. And so I would want Mr. Murray to weigh in on whether he would prefer that optionality and delay the finalization of the second reading, or would he prefer, if the votes are there for him to get the second reading approved tonight. And then obviously he has some communication from staff that in theory, in an informal sense, they would look favorably on that option playing out. Yeah, I know.
Thank you, Mayor Combs. My preference is to have the second reading tonight. If we need adjustments, we'll come back, and if that requires council approval, we'll handle that. But it's critical to the timeline of many things, including continuing with the purchase of the church to keep moving forward.
Okay, thanks for that. I don't think we need Mr. Biddle to weigh in on this. Are there any other questions?
Is it possible to just add to the resolution that we would like to have, even though it won't be in the DA, that we would like 100% housing to also be fast-tracked? In other words, it wouldn't actually be in the DA, but there would be some record of it.
Like a statement of intention. Yes, that would be fine.
Or just that like any housing would be fast-tracked? Yeah. Yeah, I'm supportive of that. So I don't, yeah. Okay. Councilmember Schmidt, Councilmember Wise, I just want to make sure. Are you guys good? Or, all right.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear. Thank you for presenting that back to Mark and team around what they would prefer to have, because I think, the key thing I want to see is there's been so much work on this that it moves forward in a way that they can follow through on their pieces. So I'm definitely supportive of the second reading tonight and kind of pushing that forward based on his feedback.
Okay, is that a motion?
Happy to do that too.
Me, sure.
No,
Happy to second that. And I would just ask that the intent is in the minutes.
So just for clarification of the record, we are voting on the entire consent calendar, again, with the direction of adding that any housing permits would be fast-tracked. Okay, so with that, I have a motion on the floor by City. Do we have questions for our city attorney? Okay, so I have a motion on the floor by City Councilmember Schmidt.
Kyle and I'm sorry,
Yeah.
City Clerk, Kyle and I have the same question. Are we adding that language to the resolution or the minutes? Sorry, I was hearing resolution, but then you said minutes.
And if I may jump in to clarify, it's an ordinance. And so it's a second reading
sorry,
of the
thank you.
ordinance and just confirming that that would be acceptable.
But it would be in the in the recitals to the ordinance is what I'm hearing.
I would appreciate whatever you suggest.
Okay, yeah, we'll add it to the recitals to the ordinance and then it will also be in the minutes.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, so we have the motion by City Councilmember Schmidt and a second by City Councilmember Wise to approve the consent calendar, including the addition to the ordinance that any housing permits would be fast-tracked. This is for item I2. Any further City Council question or discussion? Seeing none, please proceed with voting. And the motion passes with City Councilmember Taylor absent. Thank you.
All right, thank you, City Clerk Heron. Thank you, Ms. Sandemeyer. Thank you, Mr. Perlotta, for making yourselves available. Thank you, Vice Mayor, for the additional questions and follow-up on that issue. So with that, we move from 800 housing units to 1 housing unit. We'll go to the public hearing. Public hearings are a formal proceeding held in order to receive testimony from all interested parties on a proposed issue or action. The public hearing is consider and adopt a resolution approving a variance to reduce the subdivision ordinance front setback requirement for a new one-story single-family residence at 8 Hermosa Pl. Here to introduce the item is Associate Planner Matt Pruder.
Thank you very much, and good evening, Mayor Combs, Vice Mayor Nash, council members, members of the public. Again, Matt Pruder, Associate Planner, and I'm providing a brief presentation for tonight's 8 Hermosa Place variance project. Here is the proposed site plan. The subject property is located on Hermosa Place, which is a cul-de-sac located in the R1S zoning district, east of Hermosa Way and between Middle Avenue and Bay Laurel Drive in the West Menlo neighborhood. The applicant is proposing to construct a new one-story residence with an attached garage and a detached ADU, accessory dwelling unit, on a pie-shaped lot that would be subject to the subdivision ordinance. The project would meet all zoning ordinance requirements, but needs a subdivision ordinance variance for the front setback that they are proposing. No discretionary review is needed for the project apart from tonight's subdivision ordinance variance request. In most single-family zoning districts, the zoning ordinance requires a minimum front setback of 20 feet. But for lots with a curved radius of 100 feet or less, the front setback is established in the subdivision ordinance, which is Title 15 of the Municipal Code. As shown in the diagram on this slide, the front setback is taken from where the minimum lot width, in this case 80 feet, can be achieved. This usually results in a longer setback distance. In this zoom in of the site plan we just saw, we are highlighting the differences between the front setback distances, excuse me. We've highlighted the green, blue, and red lines to indicate the 20-foot front setback per the zoning ordinance, the proposed variance front setback of 42 feet, and the 57-foot 1-inch setback per the subdivision ordinance as required by the subdivision ordinance, respectively. The 42-foot distance is still more than double the 20-foot zoning ordinance requirement. That's the line in the middle in blue, in case you can't quite make out the color. As shown in the darker gray color, kind of on the middle right of the diagram, that's the outline of the proposed residence. It would have portions of the garage, the front entry porch, and a portion of the living room that would encroach within that 57-foot 1-inch setback distance, which would comprise generally limited encroachments overall. Additionally, the subdivision ordinance contains 3 findings that are required for granting tonight's variance request. The first is that the variance would not constitute a special privilege. This is consistent with other neighboring properties, and the 42-foot distance exceeding the existing requirement in the zoning ordinance of 20 feet, along with the project meeting all other zoning requirements expressed in the R1S zoning district, would prevent the granting of a special privilege. Second is that the special circumstances apply to the property. And generally speaking, the site characteristics, namely the size and shape of this site, are unique to the site. Only 2 properties that are that are located on Hermosa Place are subject to this subdivision ordinance requirement for the front setback. Third and final point here is that the variance carries out the spirit of the subdivision ordinance. And to clarify that, the proposed project would meet all of the R1S zoning district requirements, as already stated. And tonight's variance request would allow the site to maintain the development pattern of other residences along Hermosa Place. This concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions. I'd also like to add that the applicant team, led by Alan Kabigting, has no presentation, but their team is in attendance tonight in the council chambers, and they're available for any questions as well. So we're both available for questions if you have any. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pruder. City Clerk Karen, let's call for public. Oh, right, is so I'll see if there's any clarifying questions. I actually have a clarifying question. The public hearings throw me off a bit. So if it's a variance to regular zoning ordinance, it goes to the Planning Commission. But if it's a variance to a subdivision ordinance, it has to come to the City Council. Explain to me why.
Yes, that's because the subdivision ordinance expressly states that in Title 15. Back on the slides I was looking through.
Well, I know that. We're doing it because it says we have to do it. But
Yes.
What's the logic behind why the council and not the Planning Commission would not be the decision-making body of a variance? And if, I'm sorry, I know it's a random question having nothing to do with this exact, well, it is related to this project, but more macro level.
Thank you for your patience on that item. Yes, so the Planning Commission generally looks at variances that involve zoning ordinance modifications, and that is common for anything in the zoning ordinance that involves a variance. In this case, this variance is in Title 15, and it is not something that the Planning Commission would review and consider. We can't speak to how that framework was determined, but obviously sometime in the past that had occurred, and it was determined that this type of request from this type of title of the municipal code differs, and thus this was established, unlike all the other types of requests you get for zoning ordinance with its height, setbacks, daylight plane, parking, and so on.
Okay, thanks. Any other clarifying questions for Mr. Pruder? Councilmember Schmidt?
Apologies, this one may be is skirting the line of clarifying versus discussion. So if it feels like it's discussion, please, we can write it in. Is this potentially also an opportunity? I noticed it said that you're evaluating opportunities to amend this, on a more permanent basis. Is this also, to the mayor's question, an opportunity to maybe go back and do a little cleanup on why we're seeing it versus planning? Or could that be something we should consider in the future?
Thank you very much for your question as well. We are looking at different components here. So one could be the actual reviewing body that makes the decision on this, and one other look of it, another aspect could be the process itself and what triggers these requirements and that kind of thing. So there's a little more to it than just one dimension in terms of the consideration right now with staff.
Having been on the Planning Commission, there's one thing that's consistent is if your house is on a cul-de-sac, because a lot of these variance requests, and there's not a ton of them, but relate to cul-de-sacs and the unique way in which the setback is challenging for them to adhere to, because of like how those parcels are. Yeah. But any other, just something to keep in mind. Okay, let's open the public hearing and call for public comment.
Thank you, Mayor Combs. So at this time, if any member of the public wishes to provide comment on our public hearing J1, a resolution approving a variance to reduce the subdivision ordinance front setback requirement for a residence at 8 Hermosa Place. If you're in person, return that speaker card. Virtual, engage that hand feature. Calling in, press star 9 now. Final call for public comment on our public hearing J1. Seeing no hands or cards, Mayor Combs, you may continue.
Great, thanks. So I'll close the public hearing and open up for council discussion and also move the item. But if there are some council members who want to make additional comments, please feel free. Okay. And I can just move the item, right? Because I know sometimes with these variances, you have to actually we can just move the item based on staff's recommendation.
Yes, so I do have a motion on the floor by Mayor Combs and a second by City Councilmember Wise to adopt a resolution to approve the request for a variance to reduce the subdivision ordinance front setback requirement to allow the construction of a new one-story single-family residence in the R1S zoning district at 8 Hermosa Place. Any further city council question or discussion? Seeing none, please proceed with voting. And the motion passes with City Councilmember Taylor absent. Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Herring. Good luck with your project. We'll move on to City Council initiated items. In accordance with City Council Procedure Manual, the following agenda item is to be considered by the City Council. City Council members can ask staff questions regarding preliminary scope analysis, resource requirements, and overall prioritization of future City Council agenda items based on the city-wide work plan. After discussion with a motion and second, the City Council may take one of the following actions: preparation of formal staff report with a determined level of staff resources and timing for City Council consideration, or advisory body preparation of a formal staff report with a determined level of staff support or consideration at the City Council's annual priority and goal setting process. The City Council initiated item is request by City Councilmember Wise for a future agenda topic. And so to introduce the item is City Councilmember Wise.
Good evening. Thank you so much. I believe all of you are familiar with this topic. We have a dedicated group of neighbors of mine in the triangle in unincorporated West Menlo Park who would like to be incorporated into Menlo Park. And so I have requested that we consider at a future meeting the possibility of extending a fee waiver to allow that triangle portion to be incorporated into the city of Menlo Park. That is all I have. I'll keep it short and sweet.
Thank you. Let's call for public comment on this item.
Thank you, Mayor Combs. So at this time, if any member of the public wishes to provide comment on item K1, a request by City Councilmember Wise for a future agenda topic. If you're in person, please submit a speaker card. If you are virtual, engage that hand feature. Calling in, please press star 9 now. So far, we've got 2 speakers, so this will be the final call for public comment on our City Council initiated item K1. And our first speaker will be Greg Ferris. And as a reminder, Greg, I know you have a presentation. I am unable to display the timer, but I'll give you verbal updates.
Well, hello again, and I'd like to thank everyone present for your commitment to the community and just present a couple of slides. I'm pushing the wrong button. Oh, okay, it's a delay. I just wanted to show a map of Menlo Park with relation to annexation. In the center of the map, in the light green, is what Menlo Park was when it was incorporated the second time in 1927, which was pretty much a portion of the downtown area. Since then, roughly 70 annexations have made Menlo Park the strong and wonderful city it is today. So My point is annexation is part of what has made Menlo Park, including the chambers that we're in now, which was annexed. This shows another view of Menlo Park. Now I want to highlight the dark gray areas, which are the unincorporated areas that are within the sphere of Menlo Park. And the biggest chunk is along the Alameda. And the heart of that big chunk is the triangle, which is shown here again in a zoomed in version. The triangle that wishes to be annexed is in blue. It's bounded by Santa Cruz, Sharon, and Alameda. It's surrounded by the city in red, completely surrounded. So you can see why the neighbors might think it's reasonable to join the city. And in fact, there's overwhelming support, 80%.
Minute and a half remaining.
Halfway. 80% of the neighbors want to be they want to be Menlo Park residents. Now, annexation has moved in fits and starts with the city and the city council since the application was applied in 2015. The biggest fit was in October of 2017, where after working for a period of time, staff came to city council and said, we see a problem with the sidewalks along the Alameda, which were substandard. They either had to be ripped out or upgraded, and there was a financial concern there. That financial concern is gone. Now, these pictures show, this is actually along the Alameda on the triangle. On the left, you can see why staff might have considered the sidewalks, let's say, substandard. On the right are the sidewalks today. So since 2017, the county is considered and approved and found funding and built. It's the Santa Cruz Alameda project. So fully up to date, brand new sidewalks.
10 seconds remaining.
10 seconds?
Yes.
Gosh. Just to cover the bottom line, so there is expenses here, roughly $25K to finish the job on annexation. The neighbors have been helping out here, identifying CEQA exemptions, the destination of the assessment districts and other things. That $25K can be balanced against the tax revenue, which to date, since we applied, a cumulative tax revenue that went to the county instead of the city of about 1.2 million. So in conclusion, excellent opportunity for annexation. Financial concerns have been removed. It'll help make a stronger and better Menlo Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. And our next speaker will be Jenny Michelle.
Dear Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, honorable staff, I'm Jenny Michelle, native and resident in District 3, commercial property manager by trade, and a recovering homeless teacher. I am making personal comments. This item we have seen, as he laid out, for many, many years. We have very close friends who live in the Triangle who are not just feeling like they don't really have direct representation on a municipality level, but they would like to, run for commissions and participate in public service and local civics, and they're not able to. We've also seen and heard from BOS Sub Mueller, who is in favor of supporting this action. So I know that the city definitely has, competing priorities, and I think that it's time for us to welcome new neighbors into the city fold. I know that we would support that move and any financial investment for that. And then lastly, I just really want to thank Councilmember Wise for bringing this matter up. I'm really impressed, and I thank you for considering your constituents. Have a good night.
Looks like we had an additional hand raised, so we'll invite Pam Jones.
Yes, good evening, Pam Jones, resident of Menlo Park, Bellhaven neighborhood at the opposite end of Menlo Park. And I've spoken before about welcoming this community into being a part of the city. And I don't think we can have a much greater value than to have people that have consistently for, a number of years requested to be a part of the city. And it seems to me that they would bring a great amount of value, as well as realistically the property. And as far as staff time, the majority of the work has previously been done. The dollars will change because money always changes. But other than that, I just really hope that you will welcome this area into the city of Menlo Park. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further hands or cards, Mayor Combs, you may continue.
Thank you, Clerk Herron. And just to be clear, what we're voting on and providing direction on is whether to agendize at some point in the future a decision of whether to grant the fee waiver or not. So we're not actually granting the fee waiver tonight. We're making a decision about whether we want to have as an agenda item granting the fee waiver, granting the fee waiver. And so, I'm supportive. So I'll let other council members weigh in as.
So I would love to be supportive, but I am not. I think that we should discuss it at our city's annual priority and goal setting meeting. I greatly appreciate Mr. Ferris and all he has done over the years. And also Ms. Michelle and Ms. Jones and their comments. But I really think that it would be doing a disservice to our current residents who are waiting and waiting for many things to be done. And now we're going to be adding more items to the list. I think we need to get some of our current priorities and projects under control before we evaluate this. And it's our staff is excellent and running very, very flat out. And I just don't see us having the bandwidth to do it. And so I would say no, we have another opportunity in February to take a look at it and see how we've progressed at that point. But I will be voting no.
I think whilst I appreciate the opportunity costs, it feels like this has been a long time coming. I would also support getting it on the agenda because actually I would like to understand what those opportunity costs are. And my understanding is this is quite minimal. It's a fairly light draw. So it feels like they've been waiting long enough, and I'm happy to support getting it on the agenda.
So I have a couple more questions in that. So I understand that the Triangle has been very, very strong advocates for their own incorporation, but there's also neighborhoods on both other sides. And I've also personally spoken to someone just last weekend who said they would love to become part of Menlo Park. I don't know, but I think at some point, although yes, one group has been a strong advocate. So anyway, there's many different neighborhoods who are interested. I would also, I don't know if this is appropriate as part of this current item to ask the city manager if it is realistic that a $25,000 fee waiver would actually crystallize all this and magically we would what would it take? Can we get any just sort of high level knowledge, or is that part of the next step?
Through the mayor, in general, I'd say that would be best as part of the next step. I can say that in conversations with Mr. Ferris, yeah, that number, it was in some consultation, so there's a slight chance that that would be the number, but we would just keep track of time on the hour like we would any development project. And so at the end of the day, we'd know exactly what the cost was, but that would be it is a ballpark estimate.
And by cost, we're talking about staff time, right? We're not talking about the city writing a check.
It's staff time. That said, this is again a reason for whether or not the council wants to agendize it is if there is checks cut. Yes, there are checks cut to any contractors that would be working on it, and there would be some composition of contractors working on it, and that could vary. So there would be not just the opportunity costs but there could be out-of-pocket costs.
Can you give us any more idea, at least either now or in the report? I'd like to know more about the opportunity costs and what projects would not move ahead or would move more slowly if we were to do this.
Yes, that could be in the staff report.
And I assume it's not appropriate at this point to say writing the staff report obviously takes time. Is there any opportunity costs there that we can hear about now?
I think within the council framework of whether or not to agendize something, it'd be fair to for staff time to be spent to put towards that staff report. And so it's then my responsibility to keep that manageable.
Okay. Like I've moved the item, Councilmember Wise, a second. I just, as I've said in the past, I just can't imagine that like, it should take 10 years to annex a couple of dozen houses on the border. And so it just, at this point, at some point, I'm going to be frank, it just becomes embarrassing. Someone said this was like the longest case in San Mateo LAFCO history. I don't know if that's true or not, but someone did say that, and I just can't imagine. Again, yes, the city, and you look at the city and its borders is just a patchwork of annexations. And I can't imagine that at some point it became something that became a decade-long process. And so, as I said, I'm supportive. I appreciate that there will be some opportunity cost trade-offs. There is with everything. I see this as a priority. I will say that. And again, I'm only speaking for myself. And so I'm certainly supportive of it being an agenda item. Councilmember Schmidt, yeah.
I'm happy to, we meant to take a motion on this because I don't know if Councilmember Wise
Yes,
is able to.
we do have a motion and a second.
Yeah, it's on the, but you can continue to speak.
I'm looking at the wrong screen, so I'm happy to carry that forward too.
Okay. So with that, we do have a motion on the floor by Mayor Combs and a second by City Councilmember Wise to prepare a formal staff report with the determined level of staff resources and timing for City Council consideration. Any further City Council question or discussion? Seeing none, please proceed with voting. And the motion passes with Vice Mayor Nash dissenting and City Council Member Taylor absent. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Clerk Herron. Informational items are transmitted to the City Council and staff's effort to provide an update on matters of importance to the City Council. Informational items are not action items. However, a City Council member, a city staff member, or a member of the public may request to make a comment or ask questions on any informational items. I know the Vice Mayor pulled and wants to discuss one of the informational items, but we'll just call for public comment on both informational items and then come back for staff discussion. Or excuse me, not staff discussion, council discussion.
Thank you, Mayor Combs. So at this time, if any member of the public wishes to provide comment on our informational items, L1, City Council agenda topics, or L2, the City Council work plan update. If you are in person, please return a speaker card. If you are virtual, engage that hand feature. Calling in, press *9 now. Final call for public comment on our informational items L1 and L2. Seeing none, Mayor Combs, you may continue.
All right, I'll turn it over to the Vice Mayor.
Thank you. So last week I was going to talk about the plazas. Since last week, there's been an abundance of information that has come out. Thank you so much. There is now a city webpage for the public plazas, and there's 2 public sessions planned. One is going to be, actually, should I let you say it or should I? Great. One is going to be on October 19th, Sunday night, October 19th at the Farmers Market. There will be public plaza, public input for the plaza. And so I want to thank you so much for that. I do have 2 questions, and that is, can we get a project timeline for the plaza?
So currently we're in the outreach phase. We'll have the farmers market on Sunday. The following week, we'll have a pop-up at the actual site to capture input from students and people who use it in the afternoons. And then we'll also compile the information from our online feedback form and package that up for a city council item. In the meantime, we're working with our consultant on a potential phased approach to improvements, which could include, for example, installing seating ahead of the other design elements in the more comprehensive design. And that we would bring that forward at the same time with results of public outreach. So we're thinking November would be the month we would bring that back to council, and then we can move forward with some of the early phase implementation.
Thank you so much. That's really exciting.
Okay, we'll move on to City Manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no updates this evening.
Okay, we'll move on to the City Councilmember reports. I'll just have one report announcement that we have finalized the date for the State of the City address, finally. October 23rd, right? 23rd, I think. Okay. And it'll be at Bar Loretta downtown. So looking forward, and Bar Loretta, right? That's downtown. So looking forward to that event, and all are welcome. Are there any other City Council member reports? Okay. Oh, sorry, Vice Mayor.
I'm sorry, I do have some reports. The PCE meeting, it was actually 2 weeks ago, we had an agenda item on the 2025 REACH codes, and which was really interesting. Menlo Park got a call out as the only city in San Mateo County who passed a REACH code with 2-way air conditioning, electric readiness, and flex path. And so that was exciting. And then we also reviewed Peninsula Clean Energy's 5-year strategy plan this is the plan that just is ending from 2020 to 2025. It was amazing what has been accomplished in those 5 years. And again, Menlo Park got a recognition. And both of these, we were the only city that was called out. It was pretty spectacular. Menlo Park got recognition as leaders, being the first city to adopt a REACH code ordinance, which is now fairly standard. I also attended a BOSCA meeting where the SFPUC report on water supply conditions looks really good, and everything is looking great for the water supply. And also just wanted to mention that BOSCA continues to work closely with the SFPUC in tracking and engaging with the state water board's efforts on the Bay Delta plan. And I would at some point like to have a discussion about the Bay Delta plan at council. And I don't know exactly when that's ripe to do, or when we might have time on the council, but it seems like it's an issue that has a lot of strong feelings on both sides, and should probably, it would be good to discuss it here, certainly before I need to vote on it. So I also went to a vice mayor gathering where we talked about affordable housing, and wanted to mention that upcoming on Thursday, October 9th, this Thursday, The Menlo Park City School District Board will discuss e-bikes in an effort to communicate the trends, research, data, and challenges. And that meeting will take place at 6 p.m. in the district's offices at 181 Encinal Avenue, and it's also via Zoom. So that'll be an interesting discussion, which I will say I have to miss because I will be at the Long Beach conference. So hopefully someone else will be there.
Yep.
So great. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith?
It's not working. Yeah, I'll definitely be there as well because there's that'll be a very interesting meeting about the e-bikes. So one thing I wanted to just get on everyone's radar is I attended a Sustainable San Mateo County meeting, and although that's not a formal part of that group, they launched their indicators report, which was about food waste and organics and recycling and everything else. That does overlap with my role on Rethink Waste, and Joe, the exec director of Rethink Waste, was in the audience, and so there may be some discussion coming forward about how we can take that indicator report and look at what's happening in school districts in the city, just so people are aware. Organics and recycling it's sort of a hidden part of the climate issue that we have, and so the report was really a great highlight for that and a kind of a call to action for our cities to begin thinking about that in a deeper way, potentially talking to school districts about their food waste. And so it was a really good launch of that report, and I'd encourage folks to check that out, but then know that as I talk to Joe and the Rethink Waste team a little bit about what that might mean, then that'll probably come back to the city as well with some ideas and proposals. So just wanted to get that on everyone's radar. Thanks.
Councilmember Wise?
Mayor Combs, I have one announcement. I apologize.
sorry.
I missed this at the beginning of the meeting, but we are currently recruiting for one vacancy on our library commission. So if anyone is interested, please visit menlopark.gov/commissions or come up to the city clerk's office at City Hall. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. With that, we'll adjourn the meeting.